The first time my parents changed the garage code, it wasn't about security. It was about control. The wind off the Hudson cut through my jacket like it had something personal against me. New York in late October doesn't ease you into the cold, it shoves you straight into it. The sky hung low over Queens, heavy and gray, like it was tired of pretending to be hopeful. I pulled into the driveway, just after 9 p.m., headlights washing over the familiar brick house. The same house where I learned to ride a bike. The same driveway where my dad taught me how to throw a baseball and told me, "In this country, you earn your place." I parked, sat there for a second. Something felt off. The porch light was on, but the curtains were drawn tight. The house didn't look lived in, it looked sealed, like it was holding its breath. I stepped out and walked to the side of the house where the garage keypad glowed faint green in the dark. 4 numbers. The same 4 numbers it had been for 15 years. I punched them in. Beep. Red light. I frowned. Tried again. Beep. Red. A slow, heavy realization crawled up my spine. They changed it. I stood there, hand frozen midair, heart pounding harder than it should have. My car was full. Clothes and garbage bags, 2 suitcases, a duffel bag. My apartment lease had ended that morning. My startup funding had collapsed 2 weeks ago. I'd swallowed every ounce of pride I had left to come back here. Back home. And they changed the code. I knocked on the side door instead. Footsteps. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened halfway. My mother stood there. Hair tied back tight. Lips pressed thin. No smile. "You didn't call," she said. I stared at her. "The code doesn't work." Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. Then flat again. "We changed it. I can see that." Silence. The kind that stretches too long. My dad's voice came from the kitchen behind her. "Who's there?" "It's Alloy," she answered. "Not your son. Just Alloy." He appeared behind her, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Same broad shoulders. Same steady posture. He looked me over like I was a delivery he wasn't expecting. "You should have given us a heads up," he said. I forced a breath through my teeth. "I called last week. You said you were thinking about coming back." I said I had nowhere else to go. My dad's jaw tightened. "We thought you'd figure something out." "Yeah, so did I." The wind gusted between us, cold and sharp. "You gonna let me in?" I asked. My mom stepped aside slowly. "Just for tonight," she said. "We need to talk." I walked in, and that was the moment I realized this wasn't about a garage code. This was about expectations. I was 27 years old, born and raised in New York. My parents were second-generation immigrants who believed in 2 things: stability and status. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, respectable, predictable, safe. I chose none of the above. I chose risk. 3 years ago, I walked away from a finance job in Midtown. 6 figures, corner desk, benefits, the whole American dream starter pack. I built a tech startup with 2 college friends, an app designed to connect freelance laborers directly with homeowners. No middleman, no inflated fees. It blew up fast. Local press, seed funding, investors calling. My dad didn't understand it, but he tolerated it when the money started coming in. Then the market shifted. A competitor with deeper pockets crushed us. Funding dried up. One investor pulled out last minute. Payroll hit. We bled out slow. I held on too long. By the time I admitted it was over, I was broke. And here I was, back in Queens, standing in the kitchen I grew up in, listening to the hum of the refrigerator like it was judging me. My mom set a plate down in front of me. Chicken, rice, green beans. "You look tired," she said. "I am." My dad sat across from me. "So," he said, folding his hands, "what's the plan?" There it was. Not "Are you okay?" Not "That must have been hard." The plan. I stabbed at the rice. Find a job. In what? Tech product development. Something adjacent. He nodded slowly. Stable. As stable as anything is right now. He leaned back in his chair. You had stable. I looked up at him. And I built something from scratch. And it failed. The word landed heavy. Failed. I felt my pulse spike. It didn't fail, I said. It ran out of runway. He gave a small, humorless laugh. That's what failure sounds like with a fancy vocabulary. My mom shot him a look. Enough! But it wasn't enough. Not even close. You walked away from security, my dad continued. From reputation. For what? To play CEO. I stood up abruptly, chair scraping loud against the tile. I built jobs. I snapped. I paid salaries. I took care of people. And now you're back in my house. Silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. He wasn't wrong. But he didn't get to say it like that. I'll be out soon, I said tightly. That would be best, he replied. That night, I lay in my childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling, the glow of Manhattan flickering faint through the blinds. They changed the garage code. Because they didn't expect me back. Because in their minds, coming home meant losing. I clenched my fists under the blanket. They wanted stability. Fine. I'd show them something better. The next morning, Queens moved like it always did. Fast, loud, unapologetic. Buses wheezed at corners. Coffee carts steamed. Construction crews shouted over jackhammers. The city didn't care that I'd crashed and burned. It just kept going. I walked to a diner on Northern Boulevard, ordered black coffee, and opened my laptop. LinkedIn notifications. Rejection emails. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Classic. I scrolled job listings. Product manager. Operations lead. Consultant. Each one felt like a step backward. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Hello. Alloy. Yeah, this is Marcus. From Brookline Ventures. My stomach tightened. Brookline Ventures had been one of our early investors. They pulled out before our Series A. What's up? I said cautiously. I heard things didn't pan out. That's one way to put it. A pause. I'm not calling to rub it in, he said. I might have something. I leaned back in the booth. I'm listening. There's a portfolio company struggling with operations. Logistics platform. They need someone who understands scaling and damage control. Full-time. Interim. Maybe permanent. Salary. Decent. That word again. Decent. When do they want to meet? I asked. Tomorrow. I stared out the diner window at the rush of traffic. Opportunity. Or pity. Send me the details, I said. After I hung up, I felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Small. Fragile. But real. That night, I told my parents. My mom looked relieved. My dad looked skeptical. Interim, he said. Sounds temporary. Everything starts somewhere. He nodded slowly. Just don't chase illusions again. There it was. The expectation. Play it safe. Stay small. Don't gamble. I forced a tight smile. Don't worry. But inside, I was already calculating. Because something about Marcus's tone bothered me. Brookline Ventures didn't do favors. And they definitely didn't call failures out of sympathy. The meeting was in Manhattan. Glass building. 34th floor. The kind of office that smells like money and pressure. The company was called Gridshift Logistics. The CEO, a guy named Daniel, looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. They were hemorrhaging cash. Internal mismanagement. Vendor disputes. Delivery delays. It's chaos, Daniel admitted. We scaled too fast. I almost laughed at the irony. What exactly do you want from me? I asked. He slid a folder across the table. We're considering restructuring. Aggressively, I flipped it open. Layoff projections. Department cuts. And then I saw something that made my chest tighten. An acquisition proposal. From a competitor. The same competitor that crushed my startup. They were circling Gridshift. Like sharks. You want me to clean this up before you sell, I said quietly. Daniel didn't deny it. We want to increase valuation. Translation. Make it look healthy. Then cash out. And if I refuse, he shrugged. We'll find someone else. Of course they would. I closed the folder. This wasn't a job offer. It was a test, a chance to step back into the game, but on someone else's terms. I thought about the garage code, the red light, the way my dad said failed. I'll do it, I said. Daniel extended his hand. Welcome aboard. As I shook it, I made myself one silent promise. This time, I wouldn't just survive, I'd control the outcome. That evening, I walked back into my parents' house with something different in my stride. What happened? My mom asked. I got the job. My dad looked up from the TV. Permanent. Interim, I said, but high level. He studied me. Don't screw it up. I smiled faintly. Trust me, I said. I won't. Upstairs, I sat on my bed and opened my laptop again. But instead of reviewing grid shifts files, I pulled up something else. Market data. Competitor analysis. The company that destroyed mine? They were over-leveraged. Aggressive expansion. Debt stacked high. If someone destabilized the right pressure points, they could collapse. Slowly, quietly, strategically. And grid shift. It sat right in the middle of their supply chain ecosystem. I leaned back, heart racing. This wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. It was about leverage. My parents changed the garage code because they thought I had no options, because they believed I had to play by their rules to win. They underestimated me. Everyone did. I stared at the skyline glowing beyond my window. The city hummed with possibility. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt dangerous. Downstairs, I heard my dad lock the front door for the night. Metal sliding into place. Secure. Controlled. Predictable. I smiled in the dark. Let him keep his locks. Because if this plan worked, I wouldn't need their garage. I'd own something bigger. And when the dust settled, they wouldn't be the ones changing codes anymore. They'd be asking for access. But first, I had to step back into the fire. And this time, I was bringing gasoline. The first thing I learned about power in New York, it doesn't shout. It whispers and waits. 3 days into grid shift logistics, and I already knew 2 things. 1, the company wasn't just bleeding money. It was being positioned to bleed. 2, someone inside wanted it weak. The office overlooked Bryant Park, all glass and steel and fake optimism. Midtown moved like a machine outside the windows, yellow cabs weaving, steam rising from subway grates, Wall Street types power walking like the pavement owed them returns. Inside, controlled chaos, Slack notifications popping like popcorn, ops managers whisper fighting near the espresso machine, customer support drowning in escalations. Daniel, the CEO, had given me full operational authority. Translation, if this ship sinks, it's your name on the report. I didn't mind. I'd rather be blamed for steering than ignored for drifting. I walked the floor slow that morning, sleeves rolled up, absorbing the energy. People watched me. The new guy, the fixer, the one who came from a failed startup. They thought I didn't know they Googled me. One operations analyst, a kid named Tyler, tried to play it cool as I stopped by his desk. "You Alloy, right?" he said, spinning slightly in his chair. "Heard you scaled something big." "Yeah," I replied. "Heard you're the only one here who understands the vendor routing logic." He blinked. "Ah, yeah." "Good," I said. "You're working with me." His eyes widened. "On what?" "On figuring out who's quietly sabotaging us." He swallowed. "Wait, what?" I leaned closer. "You think this level of inefficiency is accidental?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. By Friday, I'd mapped 3 internal choke points. Vendor payments delayed without documented reason. Routing software updates, pending review for weeks. A sudden spike in compliance audits triggered externally. Externally, guess who was pushing those audits? our biggest competitor, the same company that crushed my startup. They weren't just circling. They were squeezing. I stood in the conference room late that night, city lights flickering against the glass walls, and pulled up the acquisition draft again. The offer undervalued grid shift by at least 35%. Predatory. And Daniel, he was close to accepting. I heard the door open behind me. "You work late," a female voice said. I turned. Dark blazer, sharp eyes, confident posture. "I could say the same," I replied. She stepped into the light. "Camila Reyes, CFO. Ah, the real brain in the room." "Nice to finally meet you," I said. "I've been watching you." I smirked slightly. "That usually costs extra." She didn't laugh. "I know what Brookline is planning," she said calmly. That got my attention. "And what's that?" "They want to clean up our books, just enough to justify selling. They're done investing in growth." I studied her face. No hesitation. No corporate filter. "You against the sale?" I asked. "I'm against being undervalued." There it was. Not emotional. Strategic. I liked her already. "You think we can stop it?" she asked. I didn't answer immediately. Outside, a siren wailed down 6th Avenue. New York never sleeps. It just recalculates. "Yeah," I said finally, but not by playing defense. She crossed her arms. "Explain." I turned the screen toward her, pulling up competitor data. They're overextended. 3 new regional expansions. Debt stacked on future projections. If even one supply chain lane destabilizes. She leaned in. "Their leverage ratios spike," she finished. "Exactly." She looked at me carefully. "You're not trying to save grid shift." I held her gaze. "I'm trying to flip the board." For the first time, she smiled. "Damn," she muttered softly. Okay. Back in Queens, my parents had no idea what game I was stepping into. Dinner that Sunday was quiet. Too quiet. My mom made lentil soup. My dad read the business section of the Wall Street Journal like it was scripture. "You're quiet," my mom said. "Thinking," I replied. My dad didn't look up. "About how to keep your job?" I let that one slide. "For your information," I said calmly, "I'm restructuring operations." He folded the paper slowly. "Restructuring," he repeated. "You're not even permanent. Permanent is earned." He nodded. "Exactly." There it was again. Expectation. Achievement as currency. Love as conditional reward. I put my spoon down. "You ever take a risk?" I asked him. His brow furrowed. "I moved to this country with nothing." "And after that?" Silence. "I built stability," he said firmly. "Yeah," I said. "You did. But stability isn't the same as growth. And growth isn't safe." That night, I lay awake staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to my ceiling from when I was 12. They hadn't moved in 15 years. Maybe that's what my parents wanted. Fixed stars. Predictable constellations. But I wasn't 12 anymore. And I wasn't staying small. Monday morning, I made my first move. I called an emergency vendor summit. 30 suppliers dialed in. Some annoyed, some defensive. I didn't waste time. "Payment delays are being resolved within 48 hours, I said firmly. "Routing optimization updates go live Friday. Any compliance audits will be handled internally." Murmurs filled the line. One supplier spoke up. "We heard acquisition rumors." "Rumors don't ship freight," I replied. "Performance does." Silence. Then another voice. "Are we safe partnering with you?" I leaned back in my chair. "Let me put it this way," I said. "If you stand with us now, you won't just have a partner. You'll have leverage when the market shifts." Camila watched me from across the room. After the call ended, she shook her head slightly. "You're gambling." "No," I said. "I'm recruiting." But the real play wasn't external. It was internal. Tyler and I dug deeper into system logs. And then we found it. A pattern. Small routing inefficiencies inserted manually. Just subtle enough to avoid detection, but consistent, and tied to one user ID, Operations Director. Name, Brett Lawson. I stared at the screen. Call him in, I said. Brett walked into my office that afternoon like he owned the place. Mid-40s, expensive watch, relaxed confidence. You wanted to see me, he said casually. I gestured to the chair. Have a seat. He didn't. I'm good. All right. I rotated my laptop toward him. Care to explain why routing override spiked 18% under your login? His smile faded just a fraction. Operational adjustments, he said. Funny, I replied, because those adjustments cost us 6 figures. He shrugged. Optimization experiments. Without CFO approval. He leaned forward slightly. You're new here, he said quietly. You don't understand how things work. No, I said calmly. I understand exactly how they work. We locked eyes. You're tanking performance metrics before acquisition, I continued, driving valuation down. His jaw tightened. That's a bold accusation. Not really, I said. It's math. Silence filled the room. Then he smirked. You think you can stop what's already in motion? I didn't flinch. Yeah, I said softly. I do. He straightened up. You won't last. Maybe, I replied, but neither will you. After he left, Camila stepped in. Well, she asked. He's dirty. She exhaled slowly. I suspected. Who's he loyal to? I asked. She hesitated. Brookline. Of course. The investor who rescued me with this job. They didn't want grid shift strong. They wanted it cheap. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just business. This was orchestration. And I was placed here to clean the stage before the final act. They underestimated one thing. I don't play background roles. That evening, my dad was in the garage when I got home. The door was open. He was organizing tools. The keypad glowed beside him. New code. I stood there watching for a moment. You going to just stand there? He asked without looking at me. I was thinking, I said. About access. He glanced at me. You earn access. I stepped closer. And what if I build my own door? He snorted softly. Everyone needs a foundation. I looked around the garage. The smell of oil. Old baseball gloves. Holiday decorations stacked in labeled bins. His domain. Controlled. Structured. Predictable. I won't be here long, I said quietly. Good, he replied. But something in his tone shifted. Maybe doubt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe fear. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking for space. I was preparing to take it. Back in my room, I opened my laptop again. And this time, I drafted something bold. An alternative proposal. Not to sell grid shift, but to merge assets strategically with 2 mid-tier regional carriers. Create a coalition. Increase market leverage. Trigger a competitor panic. It was risky. Aggressive. Almost reckless. But if it worked, grid shift wouldn't be prey. It would be a predator. I hit send. To Camila. Subject line. Let's change the code. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Her reply. I'm in. I leaned back, heart racing. Downstairs, the garage door closed for the night. Locked. Secure. But inside that house, the energy was shifting. My parents thought changing a code meant setting a boundary. They didn't realize I was about to change something much bigger. And when this move hit the board, someone powerful was going to feel it. The only question was, would it be my competitor or Brookline? Because if they pushed back, I wasn't sure I'd stop at saving grid shift. I might burn the whole structure down. The first time you realize the system is rigged, you have two choices: play along or learn how to rig it better. By the time December hit New York, the air turned metallic, sharp, electric, alive. Midtown sidewalks were packed with tourists in oversized coats, steam curling from food carts, Salvation Army bells ringing like background noise to capitalism. Inside grid shift, war mode, Camila and I had spent 3 weeks building the coalition plan in secret. 2 regional carriers in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Undervalued, efficient, hungry. If we merged routing infrastructure and pooled vendor leverage, we'd instantly expand coverage by 42%. That would spike valuation. That would kill Brookline's cheap acquisition play. That would corner our competitor. But it would also paint a target on my back. And that target was getting brighter by the day. "Brett's escalating," Tyler said, closing my office door behind him. "How?" "He's been calling emergency board touch points, saying ops instability is increasing." I exhaled slowly. "Instability," I muttered. "Translation, I'm interfering." Tyler hesitated. "He's telling people you're overstepping." I leaned back in my chair. "Good." He blinked. "Good. If he's nervous, we're close." Outside the glass walls, the office hummed with late afternoon tension. Slack pings, printer whirs, someone arguing near HR about PTO balances like that mattered in a corporate knife fight. My phone buzzed. "Camila, conference room. Now." Her tone wasn't casual. I grabbed my laptop and walked fast. When I entered, Daniel was already there. And Brett. "Great." Daniel looked pale. "We need to talk about exposure." "Exposure to what?" I asked calmly. "Legal." Brett cut in. "You've been engaging external carriers without formal board authorization." "Ah, here we go." I set my laptop down slowly. "I've been conducting preliminary strategy conversations." "Unauthorized," Brett pressed. "Strategic," I corrected. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Alloy, the board's concerned." "Because?" I asked evenly. "Because Brookline thinks you're destabilizing the acquisition pathway." There it was. I looked directly at Brett. "You mean the undervalued buyout designed to strip assets?" Brett's jaw tightened. "That's speculation." "No," I said calmly. "That's math." Silence stretched. Daniel swallowed. "Brookline has influence." "So do results," I replied. I turned my laptop toward them and projected numbers onto the screen. Projected merged revenue, cost reductions, debt rebalancing, market share expansion. Camila stepped forward. "If we execute this," she said firmly, "valuation increases by at least 28%. Daniel stared at the numbers. Brett scoffed. "If. You're gambling with board trust." I met his eyes. "No," I said quietly. "I'm gambling with yours." The room went still. Daniel finally spoke. "You have 30 days, he said. Brett snapped his head toward him. "Daniel!" 30 days, Daniel repeated. "Show me traction, or we revert to acquisition." I nodded once. "Done." As Brett walked out, he paused beside me. "You're playing a dangerous game," he murmured. I smiled faintly. Good thing I'm not scared of losing. But as he left, something in his expression shifted. Not anger, confidence. And that bothered me. That night in Queens, snow began falling, light at first, then steady. The city looked softer under snow, quieter, but underneath, still steel. My dad was in the living room watching cable news. Markets scrolling red across the bottom of the screen. "You look tired," he said without looking at me. "I'm working." "On something stable?" he asked dryly. I almost laughed. "You ever sabotage someone?" I asked him suddenly. He frowned. What kind of question is that? Hypothetical. No, he said firmly. I built what I had. I didn't destroy others. I studied his face. You sure? His eyes narrowed slightly. You implying something? I shook my head. Just thinking out loud. He muted the TV. You're tense, he said. Pressure. He leaned back. Pressure cracks weak foundations and strengthens strong ones, I replied. He looked at me for a long moment. You don't have to prove anything to me, he said quietly. But the problem was, I did. Not for validation. For dominance. For space. For air. Because that garage code wasn't about security. It was a signal. You don't belong here unless you succeed. And I was done asking for belonging. Day 12. Progress was real. The Ohio carrier signed an intent letter. Pennsylvania was 70% in. Vendor confidence was rising. Stock chatter shifting. Then everything blew up. Tyler burst into my office, face drained of color. Server breach, he said. What? Routing system compromised. Data leak flagged. My stomach dropped. How bad? Bad. Within minutes, Slack exploded. Customer complaints. Vendor panic. Compliance alerts. Camila stormed in. This isn't random, she said sharply. I already knew. Brett, she asked. Too obvious, I replied. This was bigger. We rushed to the server room. IT was scrambling. External injection point, one engineer said. Sophisticated. Sophisticated. Not petty sabotage. Calculated. My phone rang. Marcus. Brookline. I answered. Rough day, he said casually. I didn't respond. Maybe this coalition idea isn't as stable as you thought, he continued. There it was. Did you just breach my system? I asked flatly. He chuckled softly. Careful with accusations. You're trying to force instability before the board review. Alloy, he sighed. Sometimes deals need momentum. Anger burned hot in my chest. You hired me to clean the stage, I said quietly. Not rewrite the script. He paused. You're ambitious, he said. I respect that. Then back off. That's not how leverage works. The line went dead. I stood there, pulse pounding. This wasn't Brett. This was Brookline applying pressure. Hard. By midnight, we contained the breach. Minimal data loss. But public perception damage. Uncertain. Camila stood beside me, overlooking the empty office floor. They're escalating, she said. Yeah. You still think we can win? I stared out at the Manhattan skyline, snow dusting rooftops, taxis streaking yellow through white streets. I don't think they expect me to go nuclear, I said. She turned slowly. What does that mean? It means if they want instability. I looked at her. We give it to the right target. She didn't blink. You're talking about exposing Brookline. I nodded. She exhaled sharply. That's career suicide. Maybe. And if you lose. I thought about my dad's garage. The red keypad. The word failed. I've already lost once, I said quietly. It didn't kill me. Silence filled the room. Then Camila surprised me. Okay, she said. I looked at her. Okay. I repeated. She nodded slowly. If we're burning something, she said calmly, we do it strategically. God. I respected her. The next week became war preparation. We dug deep, and what we found was explosive. Brookline had been short positioning the competitors' debt while quietly influencing acquisition terms across 3 portfolio companies. Artificial suppression, market manipulation adjacent, not illegal, but close enough to spark scrutiny. If leaked correctly, regulators would sniff, competitors would panic, stock volatility would spike, Brookline's leverage would shrink. But if traced back to us, we'd be finished. I drafted the anonymous tip email at 2:14 a.m. Subject line: Pattern valuation suppression, urgent review. I hovered over send. My phone buzzed. Dad. 2:15 a.m. I frowned and answered. Yeah. His voice sounded different. Where are you? He asked. Office. Pause. You should come home. My pulse shifted. Why? Silence. Then, there are two men here asking about you. Everything in my body went still. What men? I asked slowly. They said they're conducting financial inquiries. Brookline. They weren't just applying business pressure. They were sending a message. Personal. You let them inside? I asked. No. Good. I'm coming, I said. I grabbed my coat and ran. Snow hit my face as I rushed outside. The city blurred past in streaks of red taillights and white breath. They came to my house. To my parents' house. That wasn't business. That was intimidation. And if they thought that would scare me, they didn't know who they were dealing with. When I pulled up in Queens, the street was quiet. Too quiet. No black sedans. No strangers. Just porch lights glowing against snow. I stepped inside. My dad stood in the hallway. They left, he said. What did they say? Asked about your employment. Your finances. My jaw tightened. They trying to scare you? He asked. I met his eyes. Yeah. He held my gaze longer than usual. Then he did something unexpected. He walked to the garage door. Punched in the code. The door lifted slowly. Cold air rushed in. He turned to me. New code, he said. It's your birthday. I stared at him. You change it back? I asked quietly. No, he said. I changed it for you. Something shifted in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not approval. But alignment. They don't come here again, he said firmly. His tone wasn't disappointed. It was protective. For the first time since I came home, he wasn't testing me. He was standing with me. I swallowed hard. They're playing dirty, I said. He nodded once, then stopped playing small. That hit different. I looked at the open garage. Snow blowing in. Access granted. Not because I earned stability, but because I faced pressure. I stepped inside the garage slowly. The keypad glowed beside me. Control. Expectation. Boundary. And now, invitation. I pulled out my phone, opened the drafted email, looked at my dad one last time. You sure? I asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. In this country, he said firmly, you don't let people bully you out of your own house. I hit send, and somewhere in Manhattan, a very powerful firm was about to feel heat they didn't expect. This wasn't about saving grid shift anymore. It wasn't about valuation. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about drawing a line. They changed the garage code, so I changed the battlefield. And if regulators started knocking on Brookline's door tomorrow, that wouldn't be intimidation. That would be consequence. But as the email disappeared into digital space, one thought chilled me more than the snow outside. What if Brookline didn't react defensively? What if they reacted strategically? Because if they connected the dots, if they traced the leak, they wouldn't just threaten my house. They'd destroy my career. And maybe they'd turn my own board against me. The thing about lighting a match in Manhattan, you don't always get to control which building burns. By Tuesday morning, Wall Street smelled blood. Not literal blood. Financial blood. Bloomberg terminals across Midtown started flashing volatility alerts before 9:17 a.m. Brookline Ventures' name was suddenly being whispered in boardrooms where it had previously been praised. Regulatory interest. That was the phrase. Polite. Professional. Terrifying. I stood in GridShift's glass-walled conference room, watching Camila refresh a financial news feed on her tablet. There, she said quietly. A headline from a mid-tier financial outlet. Private equity firm under review for pattern valuation activity. No names mentioned. Yet. But anyone in the ecosystem knew who it was. Brookline stock exposure began dipping by noon. Not catastrophic, but noticeable. And fear spreads faster than fact in New York. Daniel walked in pale. "Tell me this wasn't you," he said. Camila and I exchanged a look. "That depends," I replied evenly. "Do you consider anonymous regulatory transparency unethical?" Daniel ran both hands through his hair. "My board's in meltdown mode." "Good," I said. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Good," he repeated. "Yes," I said calmly. "Because if they're panicking about Brookline, they're not pushing the acquisition." He leaned against the table, breathing heavy. "You're playing chess with people who own the board." I stepped closer. "Not anymore." Outside, Manhattan moved like nothing had changed. Taxis, coffee runs, delivery bikes weaving between traffic. But inside the financial district, leverage was shifting, and leverage is everything. By afternoon, Brookline made their move. Emergency board call. Grid shift leadership required. I dialed in from Daniel's office. Marcus' voice came through the speaker, smooth as ever. "We're aware of some noise," he began. "Unfortunate timing. Unfortunate." That almost made me laugh. Daniel cleared his throat. "The board wants reassurance." "Of course," Marcus replied. "We remain committed to stabilizing portfolio companies. Portfolio companies. Not partners. Not teams. Assets. Which is why," Marcus continued, "we're accelerating the acquisition timeline." Camila's jaw tightened. "Accelerating?" Daniel asked. "Yes. Before market distractions impact valuation." I leaned forward slowly. "You're rushing a sale during regulatory review." I asked calmly. Silence on the other end. "Alleged review," Marcus corrected. "You don't liquidate during scrutiny unless you're trying to exit exposure," I said. Another pause. "You're out of line," one board member snapped. "No," I replied evenly. "I'm protecting shareholder value." Daniel looked like he was aging in real time. Marcus' voice hardened slightly. "Alloy," he said. "Your interim position doesn't grant you strategic veto power." "Maybe not. But momentum? That was mine." "Then call the vote," I said. Camila looked at me sharply. "Bold. Risky. Necessary." Marcus hesitated. He didn't expect pushback this direct. And hesitation in finance smells like weakness. "Fine," he said finally. "Board vote tomorrow." The call ended. Daniel stared at me. "If this fails," he said quietly, "they'll bury you." I met his eyes. "Then let's not fail." That night, New York felt different. Wind slicing between skyscrapers. The city buzzing lower, like something unseen was recalibrating. When I got back to Queens, my dad was waiting in the kitchen. Not sitting. Standing. Arms crossed. "They came back," he said. I slid through my veins. "When?" "Today. Different men." "What do they say?" He stepped closer. "They asked if you were stable." "Stable." I almost smiled. "Did you answer?" I asked. "Yes." "And?" I told them my son doesn't break. That hit harder than anything else had in weeks. I swallowed. "They trying to scare you again?" he asked. "They're trying to measure me." He studied my face. "You scared?" he asked bluntly. I thought about it. Board vote tomorrow. Career on the line. Brookline cornered. Competitor watching. "Yeah," I admitted quietly. He nodded once. "Good," he said. I frowned. "Good. Means you understand the stakes." He walked toward the garage again. Opened it. Cold air rushed in. He handed me a small metal box from a shelf. Inside were old house keys. "You know what these are?" he asked. Spare keys, I said. No, he replied. Backups. He looked at me directly. You don't win by burning bridges, he said. You win by building exits. That sat heavy, because until now, I'd only been thinking about offense. What if Brookline retaliated legally? What if they framed the leak? What if they convinced the board I was liability? I'd been playing fire. Maybe it was time to design fireproof walls too. Board vote day. Midtown felt electric. Even the elevator ride up to the 34th floor felt tense. Daniel looked like he hadn't slept. Camila looked sharp, focused. I looked calm, which terrified everyone. The boardroom was long. Glass walls, polished table, 12 faces staring. Some neutral, some annoyed, some hostile. Marcus appeared on screen. We'll keep this direct, he said. Acquisition offer stands. Regulatory noise irrelevant. Vote determines forward trajectory. I stood before anyone else could speak. I'd like to present updated performance data, I said. A few board members exchanged glances. You have 5 minutes, one said curtly. That's all I needed. I walked them through vendor retention surge post-breach, coalition letters of intent, projected valuation bump. Then I pulled up something new. Brookline exposure analysis. Not accusatory, just factual. If we sell now, I said calmly, we anchor ourselves to an investor under scrutiny. If regulators expand scope, our valuation suffers anyway. Marcus' expression barely changed, but his eyes did. I continued. However, if we delay 60 days and execute coalition strategy, we increase independent leverage. We're not dependent on Brookline's capital. A board member leaned forward. And if the coalition collapses? I didn't blink. Then I resign. Camila turned toward me sharply. Daniel inhaled sharply. But I didn't take it back. Because sometimes you stake your name. Silence stretched long enough to feel physical. Then Marcus spoke. You're overconfident, he said coolly. Maybe, I replied. But confidence built this company. Fear will sell it cheap. The vote began. One by one. Delay acquisition. Accelerate sale. Hands raised. Votes counted. 7-5. Delay. Brookline lost. Not destroyed, but blocked. Marcus' smile disappeared completely. This isn't over, he said calmly before disconnecting. No, it wasn't. But for the first time, they weren't steering. We were. The office buzzed afterward. Some relieved, some nervous, some calculating. Camila pulled me aside. You risked everything, she said quietly. I know. And if coalition fails, I'll take the fall. She studied me. You're not doing this just for grid shift. I held her gaze. No. For your father, she asked softly. Partly. For myself, I said. Because that garage code, that red light, it wasn't about my parents anymore. It was about every room I'd ever been told I didn't belong in. But power never loses quietly. That evening, as I walked toward my car in the parking garage beneath the building, I felt it. That shift in air. That sense of being watched. A black SUV idled near the exit. Windows tinted. Engine running. I slowed. It didn't move. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered carefully. You're escalating beyond your weight class, a voice said. Not Marcus. Different. Colder. Who's this? I asked calmly. You don't need names. You need perspective. I kept walking. If this is intimidation, it's weak, I said. A soft chuckle. Intimidation would involve consequences. My jaw tightened. You think blocking one vote changes power structures, the voice continued. You've exposed attention. Attention creates audits. Audits create casualties. Threatening me won't reverse the vote, I said. We're not threatening, he he replied. We're forecasting. The SUV's headlights flicked on. Bright. Blinding. Walk away, the voice said quietly. Resign. Take a settlement. Let adults handle capital. Anger flared hot. I am handling it, I replied. Silence. Then, you're confusing momentum with immunity. The line went dead. The SUV pulled out slowly. Gone. I stood there alone in the concrete garage, heartbeat steady, not panicked, not rattled, but aware. This wasn't just business maneuvering anymore. This was territory, and I'd stepped into a lane controlled by people who didn't lose often. When I got home, I didn't tell my parents. Not yet. My dad was in the garage again, organizing. He looked up. You win, he asked. For now, I said. He nodded slowly. Good. But as I stepped inside the garage, looking at the keypad glowing under fluorescent light, something clicked in my mind. Winning a vote wasn't victory. It was provocation. And powerful people rarely retaliate directly. They erode. Quietly. Strategically. I pulled out my phone, checked the coalition email thread, and my stomach dropped. The Ohio carrier had withdrawn. No explanation. Just, due to evolving risk exposure, we are reconsidering partnership alignment. Brookline wasn't attacking me. They were isolating me, one partner at a time. I stared at the message, then at the garage keypad, then at my dad. They're squeezing, I said quietly. He didn't look surprised. Then squeeze back, he replied. But this time, it wasn't just about leverage. If Pennsylvania backed out too, if coalition collapsed, I'd be forced to resign. Publicly, strategically dismantled, and Brookline would acquire grid shift anyway. Only now, they'd do it with a warning attached. Don't challenge us. I looked at the snow starting to fall again outside the garage door. Soft, silent, but relentless. And for the first time since I hit send on that email, I wondered if I'd miscalculated. Because if they cut off my coalition completely, I wouldn't just lose the board. I'd lose the only leverage I had left. And this time, there wouldn't be another match to light. Power doesn't collapse in explosions. It collapses in withdrawals. By Thursday morning, Pennsylvania pulled out. No dramatic phone call. No accusation. Just a carefully worded email about market uncertainty and strategic reassessment. Translation. Brookline leaned on them. Hard. I stood in my glass office staring at the Manhattan skyline while Slack notifications piled up like unpaid debts. Coalition thread. Inactive. Vendor optimism. Dipping. Board patience. Thinning. 30 days. I'd asked for 30 days. We were on day 21. Camila walked in without knocking. They're freezing credit lines, she said. Who is? 2 minor lenders, both connected to Brookline. Of course they were. I turned slowly. They're isolating oxygen, I said. She nodded. They don't need to destroy us. They just need to starve us. Classic private equity pressure tactic. Quiet. Legal. Brutal. I exhaled slowly. Okay. She studied me carefully. That's it, she asked. Okay. They want collapse, I said. We give them transformation. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I'm listening. I pulled up the competitor's balance sheet again. The one that crushed my startup. The one Brookline was secretly short positioning. They're exposed, I said. Camila crossed her arms. So is everyone. Not like this, I replied. They expanded aggressively into last-mile urban delivery. Thin margins. High labor volatility. If we disrupt even one key metro corridor. She tilted her head. We destabilize projections. Exactly. She leaned closer. And how do you propose we disrupt without capital? I looked at her. We don't need capital. A pause. We need people. That night, Queens felt colder than usual. The kind of cold that creeps into your bones and makes you question your own confidence. My dad was at the kitchen table when I walked in. "You look hunted," he said bluntly. "Maybe I am." He folded his hands. "You losing?" I thought about that carefully. "Not yet," I said. He nodded once. "You remember when the power went out here in '03? He asked. "The blackout." He nodded. Whole block dark. Everyone panicked. But old Mr. Hernandez down the street? He had generators. "Yeah," I said slowly. "He didn't fight the blackout. He built around it." I stared at him. "Build around," I repeated quietly. He gave a small shrug. "You keep trying to punch up. Maybe punch sideways." That landed. Punch sideways. Brookline controlled capital. Competitor controlled scale. But neither controlled relationships on the ground. Grid Shift had something they underestimated: local vendor loyalty. Freelancers. Independent drivers. Small fleet owners. The exact ecosystem my failed startup once empowered. I felt something click into place. "You're not losing," my dad said calmly. "You're thinking wrong." For the first time since this started, he wasn't questioning me. He was coaching me, and that hit deeper than any board vote. The next morning, I called an all-hands vendor summit. Not executives, not board members, operators, drivers, fleet managers, real people. Faces filled the Zoom grid. Brooklyn, Newark, Philly outskirts, Long Island. Some skeptical, some frustrated. "Alloy," one woman said, arms crossed. "We heard you're about to get bought." "Maybe," I replied calmly, "unless we change the math." Murmurs. I leaned forward. "You all know the competitor's urban corridor expansion, right?" Nods. "They're offering short-term incentives. High payouts. Unsustainable." A driver from the Bronx spoke up. "Yeah, but money's money." "Until it disappears," I replied. Silence. I pulled up projected data. If they fail to meet corridor density thresholds, they pull out of markets fast. That leaves drivers stranded. Another voice. "So what's your point?" "My point," I said steadily, "is that if you shift 20% of your corridor volume back to grid shift for the next 60 days, we maintain operational density. We stabilize pricing. And we expose their overextension." A pause. "You're asking us to take a risk," someone said. "Yes," I said. "Why?" "Because I lost once. Because I refused to be controlled. Because my father changed a garage code and something inside me snapped. But I didn't say that. Because if we don't," I said calmly, "you won't have negotiating power when private equity reshuffles this industry." That hit. Power. Leverage. Independence. One older fleet owner leaned toward his camera. "You promising loyalty?" he asked. "I'm promising partnership," I replied. Not corporate language. Human language. It wasn't a signed deal, but it wasn't rejection either. It was something more powerful. Consideration. By Friday, corridor data began shifting. Small percentages, but noticeable. Competitor route density in 2-borough clusters dipped 11%. Not catastrophic, but enough to spook analysts watching growth curves. Brookline was betting on their expansion narrative. Narratives collapse when numbers wobble. Camila burst into my office that afternoon. "You're insane," she said. "Why?" "They're adjusting pricing in response." I smiled faintly. "Good." She stared at me. "You wanted that?" "Yes." Because price wars burn cash. And cash was what they were already overleveraged on. If we forced them to subsidize urban routes longer than projected, their debt exposure would tighten. Brookline couldn't defend both fronts at once. For the first time in weeks, we weren't reacting. We were shaping. Then the twist hit. Monday morning. Breaking headline. The competitor announced a strategic pause in 2 urban expansion corridors. The exact corridors we pressured. Their stock dipped 6% intraday. Small, but symbolic. Brookline short positions would profit, but their acquisition leverage over grid shift. Complicated, because now, grid shift looked resilient, adaptive, independent. The board called emergency session again. Daniel looked stunned. "Did you orchestrate this?" he asked. "I facilitated choices," I replied. Camila couldn't hide her smirk. Board members exchanged whispers. Momentum had shifted, not explosively, strategically, but Marcus dialed in again. And this time, he wasn't calm. "You're destabilizing market balance," he said sharply. "No," I corrected. "We're competing. You're triggering scrutiny across multiple holdings. That sounds like your problem." Silence crackled over the speaker. "You think you're winning?" he asked quietly. "I think you miscalculated," I said. He exhaled slowly. "You still work for us." That landed like a slap, because technically, he wasn't wrong. Brookline still had board influence, still had capital hooks, still had legal reach. And then he dropped the real move. "We've initiated review of your interim contract," he said smoothly. "Performance conduct concerns." Camila's head snapped toward me. Daniel stiffened. Marcus continued, "If we determine strategic recklessness, you'll be terminated. Publicly." There it was. They couldn't outmaneuver the strategy, so they discredit the strategist. My pulse slowed, not sped up, slowed. "You do that," I said calmly, "and I go public with everything." Silence. "You signed NDAs," Marcus replied coldly. "NDAs don't cover coercion," I said. Long pause. "You're emotional," he said. "No," I replied quietly. "I'm prepared." The line disconnected. The room stayed silent. Daniel stared at me. "Are you?" he asked softly. "Prepared?" I didn't answer immediately, because this was the edge. If they terminated me now, Brookline could spin the narrative. Reckless interim executive causes instability. My reputation would fracture. Future capital doors close. Career scorched. But if I backed down, everything I fought for evaporated. I thought about the garage, the keypad glowing. My dad saying, "Stop playing small." I exhaled slowly. "Yeah," I said finally. "I am." That night, I didn't go straight home. I drove past it first, past the quiet Queen Street, past the porch light, because I knew something. Brookline wouldn't send SUVs again. They'd send paperwork, investigations, allegations, professional suffocation. When I finally walked into the house, my dad was in the garage. Door open, cold air pouring in. He looked up. "You look different," he said. "Decision made," I replied. He studied me. "You staying or leaving?" I met his eyes. "I might lose the job." He didn't react. "And," he asked, "and if I do, I'm starting something new." He walked toward the keypad. "Press the code." The garage door lowered slowly. "Then why you look worried?" he asked. "Because this time," I admitted quietly, "they're not just attacking business. They're attacking my name." He nodded slowly. "In this country," he said, "your name only matters if you let others define it." That hit deep, because for years, I tried to meet his definition. Stability, security, respectability. But what if my definition looked different? What if reputation wasn't about avoiding risk, but surviving it? My phone buzzed. Email notification. Subject line: formal review notice. Immediate response required. Brookline wasn't bluffing. They were moving. I looked at the screen, then at my dad, then at the garage keypad. They changed the code once. Now I understood something bigger. The code was never about entry. It was about authority. And I didn't need their authority anymore. I opened my laptop right there in the garage, snow tapping lightly outside, and began drafting something new. Not a defense, an announcement. If they terminated me publicly, I'd launch publicly. Transparent, aggressive, independent. A platform connecting regional carriers without private equity interference. Decentralized, operator-owned, anti-predatory. It sounded crazy. It sounded risky. It sounded exactly like the mistake I made 3 years ago. And yet, it felt right. I looked at my dad. "You ever regret playing it safe?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. Then, every damn day. That was the first honest crack in him I'd ever heard. And suddenly, this wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about finishing what he never dared to start. My phone buzzed again. "Camila, they're scheduling termination vote," she texted. I stared at the message. Heartbeat steady. No panic. Just clarity. If they cut me loose, I'd walk. And this time, I wouldn't come back asking for space. I'd build a door they couldn't lock. But as I hit save on the first draft of my new venture, one thought chilled me. What if Camila didn't come with me? Because if I walked alone, I wouldn't just be fighting Brookline. I'd be fighting the entire ecosystem. And that's not a war you survive twice. You don't win revenge by destroying your enemy. You win it by outgrowing them. The termination vote was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. Midtown Manhattan looked almost peaceful that morning. Pale winter sun reflecting off glass towers, steam rising from subway grates, commuters clutching coffee like armor. The city didn't care who was about to fall. But I did. I stood outside the building for a moment before walking in. The same building where 3 months ago I'd been the fixer, the comeback kid, the risky hire. Now, potential liability. My phone buzzed. "Camila, come upstairs." No emoji. No fluff. I stepped into the elevator. Mirrored walls. Corporate perfume. 2 analysts whispering about bond spreads like it was gossip. The doors opened. The air felt heavier. Daniel was already seated at the head of the boardroom table. Camila stood near the window, arms folded. Brett sat to the right, smug neutrality painted across his face. Marcus appeared on the screen again. Calm, controlled, predatory. "Alloy," Marcus began. "We're here to address conduct concerns and strategic deviation from approved acquisition pathways." Translation: you didn't obey. Daniel avoided my eyes. Camila didn't. She held my gaze, and in that look, I read something. Decision. "Before we proceed," I said calmly, "I'd like to clarify one thing." A board member sighed. "Make it quick." I nodded. "I understand the vote today may remove me." "That's your right." Marcus smirked faintly. "But if that's the case," I continued, "I'll be making a public statement regarding internal valuation pressure and market manipulation patterns tied to this acquisition." Silence dropped like a guillotine. Marcus' smile vanished. "You're threatening the board?" he asked coldly. "No," I said evenly. "I'm protecting my name." Camila stepped forward. "And the companies," she added. All eyes shifted to her. She wasn't supposed to speak, but she did. "I've reviewed the coalition projections," she continued, "and the vendor stabilization metrics. Alloy's strategy preserved liquidity and improved corridor density without external capital." Daniel finally looked up. "Camila," he warned softly. She didn't back down. "If we terminate him now," she said firmly, "we validate market rumors that Brookline prioritizes short-term exits over long-term stability." A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Marcus leaned closer to the camera. "You're stepping outside your lane." Camila's jaw tightened. My lane is fiduciary responsibility. The room cracked open. Because this wasn't just me anymore. It was credibility versus control. Marcus recalculated. You could see it in his eyes. Terminate me, risk public narrative. Keep me, risk losing dominance. Power hates losing dominance, but it hates public exposure more. A long pause. Then Marcus spoke. The termination vote is tabled, he said smoothly. Pending further review. Translation, not today. Daniel exhaled sharply. The meeting adjourned. No applause. No celebration. Just tension. But I was still standing. After the room cleared, Daniel remained seated. You're playing with fire, he said quietly. I know. You nearly blew up the board. I stepped closer. No, I said calmly. I forced them to see the fire. He studied me. You don't actually want to stay here long term, do you? That question hung in the air. And for the first time, I answered honestly. No. He nodded slowly. I didn't think so. Camila waited for me outside the conference room. You were ready to walk, she said. Yeah. She studied me carefully. You still are. It wasn't a question. No, I admitted. I'm ready to build. She was quiet for a moment. Then, if you build, you'll need capital. I won't take theirs. She nodded slightly. You'll need credibility. I'll earn it. She held my gaze longer than usual. And you'll need someone who understands balance sheets better than revenge. A slow smile spread across my face. You offering? She didn't smile back. I don't follow chaos, she said calmly. I follow conviction. Good, I replied, because this won't be safe. She extended her hand. Neither am I. Deal. Not written, not signed, but sealed. That evening, I walked into Queens lighter than I had in months. My dad was in the garage again, door half open, cold air rolling in. He looked up. You fired? He asked. Not today. He nodded once. And tomorrow, I might quit. He paused mid-motion. Quit, he repeated. Yeah. He closed the toolbox slowly. After all that fighting, I stepped inside the garage fully. I wasn't fighting for the job, I said quietly. I was fighting for control. He studied me carefully. And now I have it. Silence settled between us. Not tense, not disappointed, just processing. They can't corner me anymore, I continued. If I leave, it's my move, not theirs. He walked toward the keypad, pressed the code. The garage door rose slowly, street lights glowing beyond. You remember when you were 16? He asked. I frowned slightly. What about it? You wanted to drive to Manhattan alone. I said no. Yeah. You went anyway. I almost smiled. You were furious. He nodded. I wasn't mad you drove, he said. I was mad you didn't tell me. That hit differently now. I thought you didn't trust me, I said quietly. He looked at me directly. I didn't trust the world, he replied. That was the truth. Neither of us had ever said out loud. All those years, the pressure, the expectations, the stability obsession. It wasn't control. It was fear. Fear of loss. Fear of instability. Fear of watching your child fall in a country that doesn't cushion impact. I failed once, I said. You survived, he corrected. I might fail again. He nodded. Then survive again. The wind moved through the open garage. Cold. Sharp. Alive. You changed the code, I said quietly. He gave a small smile. You changed the locks on my expectations. That landed heavy. Because that was it. Not revenge. Not dominance. Evolution. He didn't need me stable anymore. He needed me strong. And strength doesn't look safe. 2 weeks later, I resigned. Publicly. Professional statement. Grateful tone. Future-focused language. No accusations. No explosions. Brookline didn't get a scandal. They got uncertainty. And uncertainty is worse. Camila resigned the following Monday. That surprised the board more than my exit. Gridshift's acquisition was delayed indefinitely. Not canceled, but weakened. And in that pause, we moved. Camila and I launched a new venture out of a co-working space in Brooklyn. Exposed brick walls, cold brew on tap, freelancers hunched over MacBooks chasing autonomy. The platform, Decentralized Logistics Coalition, operator equity built in, no private equity control, transparent pricing, shared corridor data, risky, aggressive, independent. The same idea that failed me once, only this time, built with experience instead of ego. The first investor meeting felt different. I wasn't proving anything. I was presenting clarity. When one VC asked, "What happens if a larger firm pressures you again?" I smiled. Then we don't depend on one firm. Power distributed is power protected. 3 months later, we closed seed funding. Modest, but ours. When I pulled into my parents' driveway that night, I didn't hesitate at the garage. I punched in the code. My birthday. The door lifted smoothly. No red light. No rejection. Just access. My dad stood inside, leaning against his workbench. "Well," he asked. "We closed funding." He nodded slowly. "You stable?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "No." He laughed softly. "Good." I stepped inside the garage. The place that once felt like a boundary now felt like a launch pad. "You know," he said, "when I changed the code, I thought I was teaching you responsibility." "You were," I replied, "but you taught me something too." "What's that?" I asked. "That safety without belief is just control." We stood there in silence for a moment, not adversaries, not judge and defendant, just two men who finally understood each other. "You still think I failed?" I asked quietly. He shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I think you built something I never had the courage to. That was the real victory. Not the board vote, not Brookline scrutiny, not competitor dips, but that. Understanding, respect, alignment. Revenge isn't destruction. It's growth so undeniable that the people who doubted you have to adjust their definition of you. They changed the garage code. I changed the locks on their expectations. And this time, no one could lock me out, because I stopped asking for permission to enter rooms. I built my own.